fighting for the #1 spot and fighting for their first Grand Slam. We have our 2022 US Open champion. It was game, set and match. ALCARAZ. He defeats RUUD in an unbelievable 4 sets. It was such an enjoyable match to watch, and let's break down and go over the reasons which led ALCARAZ to the victory. My name's Henry Tui, welcome to Matchday Breakdowns, and subscribe if you love tennis. I'm working really hard to keep producing the best tennis content I can, so subscribing would mean the world. But let's get into it and start off with the first couple of games of the match. Because the beginning is so important in high stakes matches like this to kind of set the tone of the match. And RUUD served first and saved 2 break points to eventually hold serve. And then in ALCARAZ's next service game, he saved 2 break points and held as well. And both had seen initial adversity, but none had cracked just yet. They'd saved their break points. But it was ALCARAZ who struck first, because in the 1-all game, he gained triple break point and took his second opportunity for a 2-1 lead. And as I was saying, just a huge moment. It does set the tone of the match, and it really states your intentions. ALCARAZ saved a breakback point and led 3-1. And it really felt like the final was underway. Now that the nerves were starting to be settled, they were really getting into it. And what was really clear was the incredible athleticism from both. Both had played so much tennis throughout the tournament. ALCARAZ had played 5 hours more tennis than RUUD, but just both's footwork looked so crisp, and the ball striking was simply phenomenal. And tactically, ALCARAZ was looking very, very sharp, so let's go into that. Because ALCARAZ, for the entire match, showed real class in the forecourt. He came in behind monstrous forehands, really, really intelligently, and was just clinically putting away volleys. And it became a very, very effective pattern of play that ALCARAZ went to time and time again to dictate play and shorten points, as the fatigue factor was kind of affecting him, which we will get into later. And he really had the confidence to go for the serve and volley or just a net approach in the biggest moments and trust himself. Even if he's missed a volley in the last point, he had the confidence and clarity of thought to go for it once again. In the biggest moments as well, he also went to the drop shot extremely well for early portions of the match. He saved a break point in that first game with it, and that got him to the opportunity to serve out the first set. Now ALCARAZ played flawlessly, a love hold to take the first set 6-4. It was a close set, it was high quality, but ALCARAZ did just look that 10% better. RUUD missed way too many first serves, especially when he got broken. ALCARAZ had way too many looks at second serves, and he was definitely going to capitalise. But generally, RUUD did play very, very well. But going back to the drop shot for just a moment, in the second set, ALCARAZ was going to it way too frequently, and RUUD was covering it really, really well, chasing it down and hitting winners off it. And ALCARAZ's drop shot is usually so fantastic, but RUUD's footwork really got keyed in on the drop shot, and he stopped going for it. But in the early portion, it was very, very effective. But heading into the second set, RUUD's first serve percentage dropped again in the 2-all game, and he faced a break point once more, but he did hold. And it turned out to be a very, very big game and a big hold. Because he had been under a lot of pressure, and to keep in front of 3-2, it does put that little bit of scoreboard pressure on ALCARAZ serving from behind. And a couple of things seemed to be clear in the early portions of the second set. That ALCARAZ was really breaking down the RUUD forehand. The RUUD backhand. He was hitting with so much pace and depth that it seemed that all RUUD could really do was float it back down the middle, which gave ALCARAZ free rein to either double down into the backhand or explode into the forehand, which usually forced an error. Also, RUUD's block return just wasn't doing enough. He wasn't finding the depth he needed, and ALCARAZ was getting onto his forehand and crushing it time and time again. And those kind of keys got ALCARAZ to 30 love in the 2-3 game. But then some really, really cheap errors brought RUUD back in it and changed the momentum. There was a put-away volley. He was on top of the net and he pushed it wide, just going way too close to the line than what was necessary. And then he had a shot selection error, as I mentioned, with the drop shot. Went for it at 30-all, but RUUD wasn't pushed back. ALCARAZ wasn't really in the court, and RUUD ran it down for a winner. And eventually, RUUD did break for a 4-2 lead. And after 3 unforced errors, it looked like RUUD was just going to give it straight back. But he did get himself out of jail for a 5-2 lead. And the margins were so fine. It was just those couple of errors from Alcaraz to change the momentum of the match. And Alcaraz served to stay in the Alcaraz served to stay in the set, but he clearly hadn't regained his focus, and the error count kept climbing, and I think he hit 2 double faults in that game, so just wasn't really in it. And a terrible drop shot once again, and it was 4 games on the trot for RUUD, and he took the second set 6-2, and the momentum was firmly for RUUD. And RUUD had done exactly what he needed to do. He upped his first serve percentage, and he became more comfortable playing nearer the baseline. His backhand was actually starting to do damage, and it wasn't really as floaty, and he was trading with pace very, very well. But speaking of momentum and drop shots, Alcaraz really needed a fast start to halt RUUD's momentum and build some himself. And that fast start is just what he got, as he was 30-40 up in RUUD's service games, and he went for the drop shot again, and this time it was picture perfect. He regained the initiative in the match, and after a solid hold, had a 2-love lead. Alcaraz had a break point in the next game, but he didn't convert, and it turned out to be a massive hold for RUUD, because if he went the double break down, that was basically the set, it felt like. And there was definitely some underlying frustration from Alcaraz, which kind of leaked into his game. And as I said earlier, Alcaraz did stop going to the drop shot as much and tried to sit on the baseline more and dictate from there, using his net approaches, of course, but not being too delicate with them. But RUUD did make a very, very clever adjustment. He used kind of chip slices when Alcaraz approached the net, and he just played it so effectively because it was a very low dropping ball with very, very little pace. And that's a very, very difficult volley to deal with, and that drew some key errors from Alcaraz, and those key errors put the third set back on serve at 2-2 as RUUD broke Alcaraz. And that really did highlight the importance of that 0-2 game, saving that break point to go double break point down, because without that insurance break, the momentum was once again swinging back to Casper. And I think now is a good time to bring up the fatigue factor, because Alcaraz, coming into this match, had played 3 consecutive 5-set matches. I didn't think it would really affect his game, but it was creeping in a little bit. So he played Cilic, which was 4.5 hours, Sinner in the next round, 5 hours 15, and then TFO 4 hours and 20 minutes. So overall, he played almost 5 hours extra on top of RUUD. And that's basically another marathon 5-set match that he played. And by 3-3 in the third set, it was back on serve. Alcaraz's legs did seem to be fading a little bit. The footwork lost some of the sharpness, and his first serve percentage was dropping. But it also seemed that the kind of fatigue was affecting his mind a little bit, because his shot selection choices did suffer, and he got more frustrated than I've ever seen him with himself. But that is very, very relative, because his outbursts were just shouting a little bit, but just to himself, no cracked rackets or anything. But it was kind of a sign under the surface that there was some lingering fatigue that was coming into his game. But Alcaraz is a very, very special, world-class, genetic freak of athleticism. And tired or not, he was going to fight, so he literally could not stand any longer. And he did an incredible job kind of regaining his motivation and kind of waking up in the moment. He recognized that his level was dropping, and he really gave it 110%, because he steadied his mind and proved his insane athleticism. He regained the pop in his movement and really showed his conviction in the business end of the third set. And the third set was massive. And this kind of end of the third set really felt like the turning point in the match. RUUD was guaranteed at least a tiebreak, as he held for 5-6, but conjured up 2 set points in Alcaraz's service game, which were both brilliantly saved by Alcaraz against almost any other player. That was the set, and it's a 2-1 lead for RUUD. But with a monster game that lasted a full 10 minutes, he held for 6-all. And with that question mark of Alcaraz's fatigue, could he really afford to go a set down? So he needed to play a good tiebreak here, and he definitely did. The margins were very, very fine in this match. Nobody really ran away with it at any point. And the margins are even tighter when in a tiebreak, because just a few points, a single slip-up can decide the entire thing. RUUD had been the more consistent player for the last 2 sets, but it was RUUD who budged first, and RUUD basically gave away the tiebreak. A couple of mistakes can swing it, and he gave away several. 2 horrific backhand errors from RUUD, and Alcaraz was 2 mini breaks up. then a stunning forehand winner and a tight return later, and before you even knew it, RUUD was 6-1 down. And as the cherry on top, a set point, another RUUD error. Alcaraz took the tiebreak 7-1 and the set 7-6. And it really seemed like those set point chances he had weighed on his mind, because he really gave the tiebreak away very, very loosely. Alcaraz was 0-4 in tiebreaks heading into this match, but he really came up with the goods when it mattered most. And Alcaraz led 2-1 and was just a set away from the US Open title. And that really felt like a swing in the match. Both were resolute warriors in the fourth set. Both were serving exceptionally well by 3-2 and gave each other really no chances on serve. I think RUUD hit 2 aces in a row at one point, and Alcaraz hit 3, and they'd only really had a handful the entire match each. But Alcaraz really turned up the heat in that next game, the 3-2 game. And in the match, his forehand being so explosive and so impressive, it was his backhand that he really cranked up the speed on. He hit laser beams again and again and broke for a 4-2 lead. And he was so close to victory then, but he still went for a shot and played incredibly clutch. Love 30 down, he hit 2 blistering forehand winners and then 2 aces, and he was a single game away from the trophy. And RUUD being fairly close to a break back and having that stamped out so convincingly, he really did look demoralised. RUUD served to stay in the tournament, but it was a stress-free love hole. And he put the question on Alcaraz, could he serve it out? And yes, he could. Alcaraz is the 2022 US Open champion. His first Grand Slam and the first of many, I am sure. Overall, in this match, there was so much history on the line. RUUD would make the biggest leap in history from 7th to 1st place, but instead it goes to 2nd, which is his new career high. Alcaraz is the youngest world #1 of all time. But what a contest this match was, thrilling for the crowd and thrilling for every viewer. Full credit to RUUD for the tournament he has had, but all the eyes will be on Alcaraz, and why not? 19 years old, and what history and what a match. That wraps up my analysis. A lot of work goes into these videos, making my notes, so subscribing would mean the world. Thanks for watching, guys, and have a great one.